Welcome to the Raj Kotecha Show, #1 podcast in Dubai. Joining me as always is Vic. Vic, how you doing? And let the people know what we covered in today's episode.
I'm good, man. I'm good. This was an amazing episode. We talked a lot about the festival in Riyadh, where DJ Khaled pulled up with his friends, Fat Joe, Rick Ross, T.I., Future, and Busta Rhymes. We spoke a little bit about Kanye on InfoWars and some more controversy that he's been creating. Nike and Adidas are reducing their production and what impact that will have to their business. We also talk a little bit about SoleDXB that's coming up this weekend, and I'm super excited because it's my first one that I'm ever going to go to after being in Dubai for 6 years. And still on the celebrity stuff, we talk a little bit about Will Smith and his little mini comeback and the interview he had with Trevor Noah, where they talk a lot about the slap at the Oscars.
Yeah, amazing. We also get into a little bit of Balenciaga controversy and a little bit more, as well as a really incredible set of content recommendations, especially if you're in the content world, and a huge breakdown of Out and About in Dubai. We're going to get into today's episode. Alex slept through and did not make it to the beginning. And also we made a mistake. We didn't get a chance to give a shout out to our cousin Neil and his new wife, Vicky. Congratulations on getting married. Who's going to do the edit for this show? Vic, you want to say something to Neil?
No, listen, I just completely forgot myself as well. We actually watched it over Zoom yesterday morning. So big shout out to Neil and Vicky. Finally married. I'm really, really happy and really proud of them.
Yeah. We'll talk about that story one day in the future, but they're out in Hong Kong. Hong Kong open, closed, a bit of a pain, but they're finally married. So shout out to our family and new family. But listen, for now, it's time to get into the show. Whoever's doing this edit, might even be me, run the music. All right, looks like we managed to just get this episode out by the end of the week. The last 2-3 days has been super duper busy, working till we fall asleep. But we couldn't get through this episode, or we couldn't get through this week, definitely, without dropping an episode. And it feels almost like there's been even more news stories, even though we've only added on 2 days of a delay from our normal recording schedule. It's a packed one this week.
There's a lot going on. I don't know if it's because it's kind of coming up to the end of the year, but it feels like there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, let's start off positive in a world that we know really well, which is that just this morning, actually, we discovered, we saw a lot of the content from the Middle Beast Festival, which has a lot of our kind of like community in there, hip hop acts. And so there's a guy that I've been following, not for too long, a guy called Sia. Looks like he's one of the biggest promoters in this region for hip hop acts. And looking at his stories today, it looks like hip hop was in full effect over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. According to a post that I saw by Rick Ross, who was also there, a crowd of 250,000 people. That sounds high, man.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, it looks massive and it looks like there's a lot of people, but in my head, I was thinking to myself, where are all these people coming from? Like, have they, there's not that many local hip hop fans. When I say local, I don't mean like local Saudis. I mean people that live in Saudi or wherever they're from. And I was thinking, well, have people flown in to Riyadh specifically to go to this event? Now, it was massive, right? The billing was huge. You've got DJ Khaled, and we'll come on to who else he brought out as well. But you got Post Malone headlining one night. You got Bruno Mars headlining one night. There's a lot of big acts. So I was trying to think, like, where are all these people coming from? 250,000 seems too high, in my opinion.
Well, here's the thing. Saudi has the infrastructure to receive all those people because they've got a big part of what they do is religious tourism, right? So from that perspective, they've got it. But this concert that Overseas Sia has programmed or put on was incredible. I mean, the acts that we saw alone this morning, help me recall, we saw Buster and Spliff Star were there. We saw DJ Khaled. We saw Fat Joe. We saw Future. We saw T.I. Anybody else?
Yeah, that was it. But that's who Khaled brought out. So Khaled was the headliner.
Yeah, so Khaled's got this format.
People.
Yeah, Khaled's got this format called DJ Khaled and Friends, which they've been moving around from festival to festival. And I think both him and Fat Joe are both on Rock Nation, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of management's concerned. And so Lenny S was in the building. Lenny S is obviously famous long-term comrade of Jay-Z. I actually met him a couple of years ago. I was introduced to him in New York in a club. Nice guy, very talented photographer. So it looks like this guy Sia put on one hell of a show, man. and his stories are like incredible. When we think about, and I've heard Big Hass talk about this as well, in terms of like, I think Big Hass was the first person to really start pumping, or one the first like league of people to really start pumping hip hop in Saudi Arabia. I remember it was a big moment when LL Cool J rang in on his radio show and showed love to the people of Saudi. But it's very real now. And I still remember my first concert, the Fugees with Nas opening. And I remember how special that was for me. And I wonder for folks last night, how many of them out of that 250K, it was their first real like hip hop show with hit after hit. I mean, every single artist up there had catalog. Busta Rhymes did his verse on Scenario, a Tribe Called Quest record.
Did he?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, if you see it on Ross's Instagram, you'll see like powerful impact boom from the cannon, and Rick Ross is like rhyming along to it. Now, I don't know how many people in Saudi would know that record, but to your point, I think a lot of people from the region would have. I mean, Middle Beast has the biggest billboards here in Dubai. It's no longer a big thing to get into Saudi. You don't need to be invited or be on a business tourist visa or anything like that. So I do expect that a lot of folks would have gone over. But what do you think? What impact do you think that would have made now? Because I've never been to Saudi. You've been loads of times, and you know the hip hop space inside out. So how's that going to affect the streets there? Is there space for like now hip hop music in the bar scene there?
100%.
Is there like?
Well, so here's what's interesting. Musically, Saudi's not behind anyone really as such, right? Apart from like major markets, of course. But if you just look at it in the context of like the UAE or whatever, when you listen to the radio, when you watch like music video TV, whatever that equivalent is there in Riyadh, I can't remember, they're playing all the latest hip hop records. They're playing all the Khaled and, you know, the commercial records. They're playing all of that.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, they have full exposure to at least like the more like commercial side of hip hop and music in general. If you're talking about from like a street, like on the streets from a cultural perspective, there's basically nothing but room. There's nothing but room for it to happen. There's nothing but room for it to like grow and evolve and have this kind of like real ground up kind of feel. And I think what's really interesting there is that they will attach themselves to these cultural moments in a far more significant way than people in Dubai. The reason for that is because it's gone the other way around. There's more openness in Dubai. There's more expats. There's more everything. So really, they're bringing out music acts and the equivalent for the expats, not for the locals. Whereas they're kind of thinking about the locals first and then bringing in the kind of expats into that kind of as a kind of, you know, like a very close number two in terms of who they're trying to attract. So from that point of view, you know, like there's going to be this kind of definitely going to be a groundswell in terms of like the adoption of the cultures or new music or new ideas or arts or whatever it might be from like the local community. And that's only going to be a good thing. And that will translate into, you know, coffee shops and restaurants and, you know, maybe like there'll be like music stores or something like that, you know, like, you know, sneaker stores, that kind of thing. That I think all of that will come, but it'll be more urban rather than being more like flashy.
Yeah, I think let's just looking at Saudi, their population from 2010 to now has gone from 27 million to 35 million. I remember someone telling me it was around 30 million, and I was like, my goodness, that's the population of Canada. So I think that they've definitely got today enough people that would be able to, if you're saying that they're playing these records on the radio anyway, then I think that, you know, maybe 80 to 90% of those people that were in that crowd could have easily just been from Saudi, especially if there's been like a market that's been bubbling there for quite some time.
And also, sorry to interrupt, also bear in mind, out of that 35 million, only around 13 or 14 million are expats.
Okay.
So, you know, there is, you know, huge local population.
Yeah.
That, you know, I know there's generational, but, you know, there is a huge young local population that will absorb all of this stuff and be able to kind of go, okay, well, how can we make that into something for Saudi?
So that for this kind of content, for these kind of like live hip hop shows, their total addressable market domestically will probably be 2 to 3 million. because there's a lot of young people in Saudi. And
yeah,
one thing that we do know is that it doesn't really matter what your background is, whether you're in Germany, Japan, whatever. When most young people come in contact with hip hop, even if they don't think it's cool, even if they don't become like lovers of the music or the culture, it is it's something that sparks curiosity. There's something about hip hop culture, Black American culture, that no matter where you are in the world, no matter who you are, when you first see it, you first experience it, whether it's in video form, music form, or whatever, you do look at it. You do think,
yeah, of course,
this
man.
looks pretty amazing. So I think for us, it's going to be an interesting activation, because when I saw all those people jumping up and down, you know, I've always been curious about getting over to Saudi, because there's a bunch of things that we have in our catalog that could be interesting to that market. But once you've got hip hop fans there, that makes things much cooler, because then we can really start talking about what we know. Do you know what I mean? We can go out there and start hosting panels and doing stuff with the hip hop community and bringing them out there. So I think it's really interesting, because
you know what's even more interesting than that is just like the reference points. You know, there's now like a cultural tie-in. Whereas before you'd be like, all right, well, how could I speak what language, not literally language, but you know, what are the cultural reference points that I can attach myself to and find common ground? And now there is at least one, you know, which is hip hop. So there is that as well, you know. So that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, I think if you now go in there and you offer them things in that world, and I know as well, like I think, you know, speaking of like Dan Greenpeace, I know he's over there and he does like really interesting stuff, like, you know, bringing out designers of people that worked on the iPhone. And so from that perspective, like working with the design community and the tech community and like global innovators. So there's such a high amount of demand over there. And I got a lot of, you know, I sent that overseas seer story to a bunch of people in the music industry in the UK, and they were like, how can we get involved? So I think, you know, with what's going on at the moment with the World Cup in Qatar, the amount of people that are going over there and saying that it's a pleasant experience, regardless of some of the controversy that's followed that story around, the fact that there's quite a few Asian teams, like Far East teams, that are now doing quite well in the World Cup. Like I know Korea and Japan have made some great progress, and some traditional teams haven't, like people that would normally do quite well. And then just with all the attention that's on Dubai at the moment, it's we are now starting to see that cultural shift towards the Middle East, and like, well, let's just call it Asia, because Asia starts around here, doesn't it? As a continent, starts in the Middle East and goes all the way out to the Far East. So the rise of Asia is really quite something. Never mind economically, like what China's doing. I mean, we are probably minutes away right now from having some sort of what looks like some sort of Chinatown on the boulevard in Dubai outside Burj Khalifa. So it's one of those trends that I think people should really like kind of watch out for, because it's really popping right now, and it's getting me excited, to be honest, because it's nice when you go to a city, and I've had this before. I had it in London when I came to London, where even if you do nothing, the city around you just grows. Like it's like being a boat where the tide is rising, and being in Dubai right now is just being here, just being a resident here is like being on a rising tide.
Well, one final point on that as well is that, you know, you mentioned the football and the World Cup. Well, there's two kind of big things. Well, three, I guess. Saudi, although they're not still in the World Cup, you know, they had a couple of amazing performances, and there was this kind of like big excitement around, you know, their win and everything. But, you know, there is this offer out to get Ronaldo to play for a Saudi team. Now, I don't know if that's going to transpire or not, but that offer is out there. So that's putting this kind of Saudi on the kind of global news map. And then the second thing is that there is potentially a bid for Saudi to take the World Cup in 8 years' time, so in 2030.
Yeah, I think they might be bidding on. Yeah. They might be bidding on World Cup, and they might be bidding on Expo that year.
Yes, so Expo as well. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot there. So now we're talking about 8 years. So now they're doing all these like building blocks to culturally make sure that they're relevant, because then no one can turn around and say, well, yeah, but they don't do anything. Well, no, hold on a second. We've got these acts coming along, these festivals, Step Conference, Tech, this, that, the other, XYZ, you know. And I believe that they're thinking about, and I don't know this for a fact, but just conversations with the families that, you know, they're also talking about getting, you know, some of these Asian players to play in Saudi, some of the African players to come over and play in Saudi, you know, in terms of football, so that, you know, there's some relevance around the sport as well.
It's interesting as well, because I obviously football's not my sweet spot, but, you know, when you look at how people are treated in the football world, when you talk about Africans and black people, from what I see at arm's length, there's always been an inherent problem in the Western soccer world when it comes to the treatment of black people, people doing dumb stuff, swearing at them, using horrible language, throwing bananas on the pitch, spitting on them. I don't think that's what you're going to see in the US, because that would cause a riot on the spot, because that level of like racism in a, you know, if it was going to happen, it would have happened in the NBA or the NFL by now. So I think as soccer rises in the US, I don't think we're going to see it there. So what's going to happen is it's going to become a stain, or it's going to become an identifiable marker of Western European football culture. And so if it doesn't happen in the US, and in Saudi, it's not going to happen. They're not going to allow that to happen, because firstly, there's the reputational damage. And secondly, you know, alcohol is just not there like that. So people are not going to be like losing their minds the same way when they fill up these stadiums. So I think it's quite interesting to see that happen. I think the World Cup coming to Saudi would be really good. And I'd probably feel more incentivized to want to go to that. In fact, you said, didn't you, Vic, that the World Cup is going to the US in 4 years? So can you imagine that?
Yes, in 4 years.
Yeah. So in 4 years, yeah. So it goes in 2026, it's in the United States, and in 2030, it goes to Saudi. I mean, that could be incredible for football to be in the two places that, you know, they have been quite diametrically opposed from a cultural point of view. Do you know what I mean? Like they're considered quite different,
and
places.
they're not traditional football countries,
right?
So,
Yeah.
So they're like the opposite, like, you know, like all these like European countries and South American countries, etc., etc. You know, they're known for football. That's the thing, and America isn't, and Saudi isn't.
Yeah.
You know, but US have, you know, proved themselves pretty sturdy in this World Cup. And you know, I think we were talking about last night as we were watching the football, ironically, that, you know, you imagine that the US put investment into sports. You know, they really believe heavily in like investing in training, and it's a big part of their culture and their identity. So if they've got ownership of the World Cup for one World Cup, then they're going to put everything into it, and they're just not going to want to embarrass themselves on the world stage. So they're going to really invest heavily, I think, and they're going to start looking at buying players and buying coaches, and, you know, for like the local teams to start getting this insight and understanding of how global football is, and bring that into the US.
Well,
it's
US
really
is
interesting time.
US has been always strong culture in a couple of things. One is storytelling. Second is just flagrant showmanship, because they are a frontier people. They are people that kind of like, you know, went the Brits that went there and then kind of like had to really kind of like build an economy there. So they threw everything at it, including some bad things, of course. But I don't think it'd be unfeasible for FIFA to launch for the first time ever like halftime shows, because I know they get a 15-minute break. What's to say that somebody like Mariah's not going to come out in the middle of the World Cup, one, the matches or the finals, and come and bust out 2 records or a 3-record montage? Like, I think if you give the US this format and you say, you guys go ahead and you package it and you floss it and you buff it up, I think it's going to be quite interesting. And speaking of which as well, I think what will be a really good exercise for anybody out there, and I don't know if at the end of the day I'll do this or not, but I might consider it just if I've got 15 minutes, is to take the social media posts of just those acts that performed at Middle Beast and just write up the quant on it. So how many likes did Khaled get for his posts? Fat Joe, T.I., Busta Rhymes, Future, and whoever else was there. Who else was there? I know there's some other people there.
Busta, Ross, T.I., Future.
Yeah, Rick Ross.
Yeah.
So, and you say, okay, look, this is how many likes and comments they got on the post they put on their wall. This is what if this is the numbers of stories that they posted. And then if you adjust for like the algorithm and you say, okay, let's say the algorithm gave them 20% reach, how many impressions were made? If you package all that up and you say, okay, these hugely influential acts, what's that going to mean? Not just in terms of like social media reach, but what's that going to mean in terms of like tourism? You know what I mean? What's that going to mean in terms of like curiosity for the region? And if people are aiming at going to Saudi, there's going to be trickle down economics for Dubai, as we know that there is trickle down economics for Abu Dhabi when people come to Dubai, or when people go to Abu Dhabi, they come to Dubai. So it's really quite special, man. I think even if each of these acts pocketed, you know, let's say $1 million each plus, like landing, accommodation, food, all that. Let's say it's 1.5 each. Khaled probably could have easily claimed 2 to 2.5 on his. So you're looking at it's still going to get overshadowed by just the positive PR and the positive look that they're going to get. I mean, Rick Ross is in his room right now being like, here's my suite. I asked for an office, so they gave me an office. I asked for a gym. Here's my gym. Like, that's going to get real curiosity going with people in their home market, the US.
Yeah, that's why again, this diversity and momentum is super critical at this point, because this is huge on a global standard. Having these acts out here, the impressions that they might be getting, and the fact that it's hip hop in a country where you wouldn't expect it to be. So on a global stage, this is a huge story. But if they have diversity and momentum, and what I mean by that is diversity in the type of acts and the type of events and festivals, etc., that they do, and they have momentum and they're doing it regularly, the curiosity on the tourism part won't be just a one-off or like an every now and then they do something big. It's like, no, like there is something happening every month or every 6 weeks, and they're big and it's great and it's something that I'm interested in, and that's where the diversity comes in. But that momentum is going to be really critical, because otherwise all it's going to be is a flash in the pan. It's going to be like, oh, they did this massive event, they had Khaled, where can they go from there? And then the next year they do something, and then it gets forgotten after a little while, right? Because new things come up in the world.
But there's no scenario where that's going to happen. Like, so you're talking about a scenario which is just never going to happen. They're not going to. I get your point about like diversity and momentum. I think they've got enough diversity for where they need to be at this part in the decade. But them letting off on the momentum is never going to happen.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just stating the point that like that's important. Like as long as there's that is there.
Yeah.
Even more so than diversity, because diversity is just whatever, right? But momentum is the most critical thing. So as long as that is there, it's fine. Because otherwise, if they don't, then otherwise it's just people are just going to forget. They're going to be curious for a little while and be like, oh, this happened, and they're just going to move on with their lives. That's why the momentum is important.
But wait, just so I can frame what you're saying properly. When you say people, you don't mean the people of this region. You mean overseas people. Like
no. What you're talking about, like the curiosity for tourism, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
People in this region know Saudi. That's not a problem. Like, no one here is thinking. When I say no one, like I'm sure very few people are thinking, I don't want to go to Saudi. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's not part of the conversation here. Like people are like, fine, you can go to Saudi when you get a chance or if you need to or whatever. It's not like that. But people outside of this region, specifically the GCC, people don't look at Saudi as a place to go for work or tourism or anything proactively. A handful of people do, but not on the majority.
People that live in the Muslim world don't have any of the misconceptions of the people in the West when it comes. So we definitely wouldn't face resistance. Open your WhatsApp real quick. Speaking of super hype when it comes to music, the biggest, most important event is just a few days away right now. SoleDXB. This time next week, next Saturday, we're going to be deep in it. It's going to be incredible. The lineup is insane. My question to you, Vic, because I've just sent you the full lineup, is who are you most excited to see at SoleDXB this year? Name your top 3 people.
Top 3? Oh, geez.
Yeah. Let me go first, and then so that we keep the pace.
Go on. I already know my 2, but there's a third one. Yeah, I mean, there's 4, maybe. Yeah, go on. Tell me yours. I know which ones I want.
Okay, give me yours.
Coast Contra.
Yep. Agreed. Same.
Natasha Diggs.
Same. Yep.
Georgia Smith.
Yep.
I'm interested to see Central C. It's not like the one for me, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
Than anything.
Yeah.
Freak. Stretch Armstrong.
You've never seen Stretch before, right?
Never seen Bobito, yes, but not Stretch.
Yes, he's good. He's really good.
Yeah, I mean, those are the main ones. Like you say, top 3. It'd be nice to see Diamond D. We met him over Zoom a couple of times, but that's it.
Yeah.
But
I like that. I like that. I like the idea. And also our friends are coming. So TJ and D-Jock are both coming.
Where?
They're both on the bill. So TJ is
I see.
right.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome. Cool,
so they're not coming as the My Sisters this year. They're coming as a solo act, but I'm sure as 2 separate solo acts, but I'm sure we're going to see them around. And also our friend Khaled from Living Proof is coming. So I can't wait to see him as well. So really excited to see these guys. Plus people that keep the culture on their back all year round, like the Presidentes of the world are going to be there. Dan Greenpeace is going to be there with that real hip hop. If you've not seen Freak and Tack perform, that's amazing, because when you want to see the people that the youth have chosen as kind of like their guys, then they're two dudes that we're gonna really like. And I also think it'd be incredible as well to see like Coast Contra come here, because these guys are like real MCs, like how they were in our day. Like these are people that just get a mic and spit. There's not much in the way of like, After Effects or anything else like that with these guys. These are literally like spit kickers. So be interested to see if there are any MCs in the room or any MCs when these guys are on and how it impacts them, because it's going to be quite inspirational, I think, because these guys are real rhymers. Like these are people that right now you could put in front of your favorite acts from the 90s and it would be like a bit of a showdown. So I think that could really raise the level of like rap and the kind of music that's coming out of this region, because there's not many people that have committed to owning that style of rhyming. Do you know what I mean?
Dude, they are phenomenal, man. Like they are so talented. And obviously I've got an affinity more so for that than I do of any kind of new hip hop.
Yeah.
So they really kind of, struck a chord with me. And check this out. This is my 6th year of living in Dubai. And it's my first SoleDXB.
That's because you are washed, my friend.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
But
You're gonna have a good time.
My wife
You're
and
gonna have a
kid
good
are
time.
coming. Shayla and Ine are both coming as well, so that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And I know Ine will bug out, but I can't wait. Like I really, really can't wait for it.
Yeah, you're gonna have a good time. And speaking of SoleDXB as well. Oh, by the way, this guy Anik Khan is coming as well. So he's a friend of a friend. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him come and perform as well. Speaking of which, big announcement. At the SoleDXB event, Def Jam are going to have like a stage or a radio area or something like that. So if you're going to be at SoleDXB, come check me out. Check out my social media. I'm going to be doing a 30-minute DJ set over at Def Jam and a 15-minute interview with our dear friend Mazi, who has been on the Raj Kotecha Show podcast. So I'll post about that as soon as I can, but keep an eye on my social media and I'll make sure that everybody finds out about that. It's going to be very, very cool. Let's see. Okay, next up, speaking of hip hop, it's not all the way up, is it? Because we got one guy really letting the team down quite a bit. Kanye West just took it to a different level this week and went to InfoWars. Not only right now is he moving around with some really questionable right-wing people or people that have like spewed a lot of like white supremacy talk, but he's actually gone into Alex Jones's show, which has been pounded with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of court cases for defamation with some seriously bad actors. But not only bad actors, what seems to have made this one stand out more than anything is he's actually started leaning into the Nazi conversation right now and started literally including Nazi conversation and Hitler conversation. And I wouldn't say he's pro-Nazi. A lot of people are saying he's pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler. That's fine. But he's doing something which is effectively as dangerous, which is he's doing like Nazi sympathizing and Hitler sympathizing. You were one of the first people at the very, very beginning of this controversy to be like, I'm done with it. Well, firstly, you said I haven't got time with it for it. This was like in our little off the record chats. And then you said, I'm done with it. It'd be interesting to see if that was your starting point. Where are you now?
More than done. Like it doesn't, for me, like this story, we have these stories come up on our group chat and, it's one of those things where I'm like, I just don't, like, first of all, him saying anything positive or negative now doesn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form. So that's number one. Number two, I actually lean more into the fact that I believe he's doing it on purpose. Like, I really believe that he's now just trying to go, okay, well, I have the permission and the license to basically say whatever I want because I've given it to myself without realizing how much of a cultural icon he was. And the real kind of thing for me is this: I just don't care. I just can't put in the time or the energy or the headspace to even like, I'm forming the opinion on the spot right now. I saw it. I was like, this guy's a twat. He shouldn't be saying this stuff. I just don't care anymore. Like, I just don't want to put in any kind of mental thought into it, really. That's the absolute truth. Like, I'm so beyond done. And if he comes out with a fire album that everyone is like, this is the album of the century, I still wouldn't listen to it.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful when you have the attention of morons. And whilst Kanye does have a very, very sophisticated follower like us, that appreciates his music and will dig in the crates and find samples and listen to dissect podcasts of what every single lyric meant and every single back reference. He's now excluded us as the minority and decided to, whether he knows it or not, awaken a nation of morons. And America has a lot of morons in it that could act without using their brains and could take some of the stuff that he's saying literally as a threat on their quality of life, i.e. some of the people that he's isolating or pointing at, people that have no threat from this nation that he's talking about, or these religions that he's talking about, or these groups or collectives, now might start proactively trying to treat this person like an enemy or treat this group like an enemy. And I just don't think it's the right thing to do, of course. And so I would actually just see you and raise you a little bit. I would say effectively right now, I'm done with playing Kanye records because the association now with his voice has become so detrimental that you can't even forgive. You can't forgive what he said. This is a man who is mentally ill. So when somebody is mentally ill, let's say somebody has the mental illness of like, they've got like violence tendencies or anger issues that haven't been worked out. You don't let that person live with like a woman, and you don't let that threat happen. So we shouldn't be letting this person, or we certainly shouldn't be supporting, him getting more and more media coverage. And we are giving him that media coverage, but I think we're doing it from the point of view of we recognize that not everyone's listening to it, and this is how it should be dealt with. He should actually be getting less and less coverage, which I'm hoping is going to happen. Elon has taken him off Twitter after reinstating him. And this is a person who needs a lot of mental health work done, because you just can't let somebody who's not in their right mind speak and be on a platform the size of the platform that they're on. And what's more worrying is he's going to a platform where there's more of those people with InfoWars. So he's not even going on general platforms right now. He's going to where his potential worst customer is.
The most dangerous thing about this is that he's saying stuff that is opinion and not necessarily fact, saying it like it's fact. And what I'm reading online, just bits and pieces that, they come up on, my feed or whatever. And, you kind of see bits and pieces, but a lot of people are saying that some of the stuff that he's talking about aren't necessarily true, that he's making them up, or maybe he's misinformed or whatever, but he's saying things that are effectively opinion or false as if they're fact. And the dangerous thing about that is that people who are morons will believe that they are fact and then make it, their business to interpret the way they wanted to interpret it. And that could have negative connotations to it. So I think I'm going to, back you on your stance and not play any Kanye records either. Yeah. I mean, I think I said it a few weeks ago that I'm 50-50. Maybe I think I said it because I have Kanye in a couple of like little skits that I do. But yeah, I can't see myself playing his records, I don't know, ever again, or like whatever. I don't know, man, but definitely not in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, he's past a very dangerous point right now. I think the next step we might see is maybe even like Spotify or people like kind of like not giving him his juice. And actually, you know what's really, really interesting? Let me just send you a picture from my Instagram. Sorry, forgive me, not from my Instagram, from my my wrap up on Spotify this year. And I would be really curious for you to describe what you see and what you think it might mean. So what I'm sending Vic right now, if you're listening or watching on Spotify video or YouTube, is my top artists. Vic, take a look on your phone. I'm also going to show people on the screen, anybody who's watching it. But just tell me what you see. Tell me when you see it. Vic, you can see it on your phone.
Yeah, I can't see a picture of Kanye.
Yep, they put out my top 5 artists for 2022. And this is obviously based on, what I was listening to ahead of everything happening the way that it did. My number 1 artist is Nas, because he's just been dropping nonstop good music. Number 2, Pusha T, because Hustler. Drake. Number 4 is Kanye West. Number 5 is Burna Boy. Now, in the big splash image, that's reserved for your number 1 artist, is Nas. Fair. And then there's 4 smaller images, of which you can see Pusha T, then next Drake, then a blacked out image, and then Burna Boy. I don't know if this is on purpose or what it is, but Kanye West picture is not being shown in my top artists on Spotify. I don't know why that is. It could be a technical error, but it could also be the fact that Spotify have leaned in and been like, we don't want to give this guy the same coverage and exposure from a moral point of view. And to be honest, I'm not against it. I'm really done with Kanye West. I think I would have to have a exceptional series of circumstances happen right now for me to be playing Kanye West in my DJ sets, including next week at the Def Jam stage at SoleDXB.
Dude, they've done it on purpose. Why? Because they have something that's out of their control, something that's in their control as far as the display is concerned. They've chosen to have these images that's in their control. They can't control your top artist because the numbers are the numbers, the data is the data, right? So if Kanye is your number 4, he is. But they have some control over what images they can put out. So they could choose one of two things. They could say, we're not going to put out any images of anyone, or we're going to put the images out or publish images on your wrap up, but black out Kanye to make a statement. So they have that in their control. So that's a proactive choice, in my opinion. That's what I see. And then the other thing I was thinking about as we were just talking about it now is, imagine this. Do you think it's happening or, whatever, but Kanye's like the long tail kind of algorithm gets throttled on things like YouTube and stuff like that, like music or even on Spotify or whatever. Do you think they'll throttle that so that people don't get served up his content, as particularly like music and stuff, but any kind of content really?
Yeah. So what Vic's referring to here on the long tail is that you've got any kind of books or lesser known records or anything that could be recommended, or songs in this case, and what Vic's referring to, that could be recommended downstream from the kind of stuff that you already listened to. And could Kanye be reduced suggested wise? I do believe that's the case. It's something that they can do in the shadows. It's not something that they need to make very explicit. What they could do on the explicit side as well is just pull him off certain playlists as well, because again, it's a stance that they can take without necessarily like having to make a press release behind it. So yeah, that ship is sinking. It's very sad. It's sad to know that at the middle of all of this, there is definitely some sort of mental illness. It's sad to know that at the middle of all this, there is a broken marriage and several kids involved. It's sad to know at the beginning of all of this or at the middle of all of this, that he is one of our most alluded and applauded acts in our genre. And he's done some super accomplishments, and where he's come from, it's really, really sad. It is that line from Batman, right? You are the hero, or you stay long enough to become the bad guy. And that's effectively what seems to have happened here. And I just hope that there's some sort of intervention. If I know anything about Hollywood during my time there, is that there's a lot of leeches and people that it's actually in their interest for him to just self-destruct in front of people. And then they'll just move from that carcass to another live one and do the same. So speaking of brands on the downturn, one of them adjacent to Kanye is definitely seeing a downturn. And we had some incredible insight on this from our editorial team. But Adidas is expected to reduce its production out of China, I believe, next year by 30 to 40%. Joining them on that journey is Nike. Now, my instinct on this, after reading the article on Hypebeast, is that seems like a lot of inventory to claw back production on. And it looks like it's something that's going to be a trend that could start next year and head into the middle of the following year, 2024. So when I first read this, I was like, okay, from a supply demand perspective, we're going to see less inventory out and about. I already feel like the price of sneakers is aggressively too high. Sneakers that I could imagine, my top line for sneakers was about £110, which I'd never pay full price for, but I was aware that was the retail. Now that number's become about 160. That's pre cost of living going up, 160, 170 in pounds. So call it about 750 dirhams. This means that number could go up. But then the guys on the group chat made a very good point, which was that they're not going to be getting rid of the premium stuff, the stuff which is what we call quote unquote hype stock, limited edition stuff, which is already high margin and obviously generates a ton of press and PR for these brands. They're going to be getting rid of the more stock stuff. How do you think this is going to play out?
I don't know. I've been racking my brain about this one because I don't really know this world super well. But I think here's the like my kind of fragmented opinion on it. Again, this is from the group chat. The resale market is going to spin out of control. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I actually don't think this is going to last very long. I don't think that Nike and Adidas can stomach, just from a, not financially, but just from, having a, their kind of real kind of core business being in the sneaker world, like that. I don't think they can stomach it for 2 years, having, just a limited amount of drops, limited amount of inventory or new, lines coming out. I think they still need their bread and butter. I think they'll figure it out some other way. Plus, also, it takes a long time to design and manufacture new sneakers and get them right and test them and everything. So this is something that's probably not happened overnight. They'd have to really think about it strategically. But I'm not sure I agree necessarily that they'll get rid of like the bottom line stuff. I think they're going to still need to keep that going, or at least it won't last for 2 years. It'll be a quick thing.
Yeah, I think,
does that make sense?
Yeah, whatever hype stock they reduce is going to definitely impact the secondary market. And I agree with you. Actually, it's a very, very good point, because you can't get rid of your bread and butter stock, the stuff that goes to the Foot Lockers of the world. What I would say, though, is that during the pandemic and other time in general, just because of the trajectory of the internet, Nike has been one of the most successful brands when it comes to D2C. And it started in the last 10 years. It got to the stage where once I knew my shoe size and the shape of shoe that I like, I would just go online to Nike store and just order them direct and have them sent to the house. Because, as time goes on, you build your habits and your regularity. I'm not one that hype beast. I don't need to be always in the flyer stuff. I'm prepared to make compromises on the colorways of my shoes as long as I can get the right price. So, yeah, man, I think what's going to then happen is that reduced inventory might also impact what these third-party retailers get. It won't affect the boutiques. Like, it's not going to affect the Amongst Views, because they're still key distribution partners for like these hype shoes, because they own the communities that can afford them or that appreciate those shoes. But I think it could affect retail. And then what does happen is a lot of those lower down and basic shoes, if you do want them, guess what? You have to go to Nike.com, purchase them, become part of their, loyalty programs and ecosystem. And it just probably helps them. This move directly could correlate to a better, more intimate relationship with their direct consumer.
Yeah, it'll be a much leaner business as a result, because if they're gonna use this as a strategic move to go more into D2C and like really like double down on that, then this is the opportunity to do so, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And here's what's great. That's why the kind of bread and butter stuff can't go, because you can't buy the hype stuff online. It's not, because it's different. There's, like you said, size, shape, this, that, colorway, try it on. That's part of the experience as well. But if you're just buying a basic pair of Nike trainers, or even like it's Adidas as well, right? So like, even if you're just buying a pair of Stan Smiths, what the shape is and what the size is. I wear Stan Smiths. I can buy them online because I know exactly what it is that I can buy. So their bread and butter stuff is going to need to stick around. And here's the other thing. They've probably got enough inventory to see them through anyway, right? So they're just talking about a slowdown in production, but there's probably like overproduction, maybe from the fact that there's like a little, like a spring back or bounce back in production for a little while, and now there's like they've got enough inventory to see them through. There might be something there as well. Who knows?
Well, that's a very good observation, because I know that one of the reasons why there's a massive like glut of merchandise for retailers at the moment is because they overordered. When we came out of the pandemic and China was back online again, people said, well, we've got to make up for the feverish demand, but then we've also got to plan for this happening again, because remember, it was happening in swings, opens, closes, opens, closes. So it's very possible that in the last 12 months, Nike have made the kind of orders where if you adjust the increase in orders in the last 12 months and the decrease in the next 24, that actually the net downswing is not 30 to 40%. Net, it might be 5, which which you made a very good point as well, which is that over the course of like Nike's history of decades and decades and decades, 1 or 2 years of a 40% reduction in orders, which makes an effective 5% difference to retail or 10% difference to retail, it's a real kind of like non-story if you just peel back 1 or 2 layers. It's some good points there, man, to be fair.
Hold on, there's one more thing I just thought of, and I don't know how true this is. It just kind of came to my mind. China's just had this like increase in cases. Like I think there was like 30 or 40,000 cases that just like was reported in the last like week or two. Do you think that they're kind of getting ahead of another potential like shutdown or slowdown in production there? And it's more like a PR move to say we're proactively doing this rather than it being forced upon us. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's a bit of a wacky one, but I don't know if that's
it's
there as well.
It's not the way it's no. I think it could be a preemptive move to lean into the fact that they may only be able to order so much. But I do believe it's a proactive dial down though. All things being said, and on top of that as well, we're going to see a decrease in demand. Like cost of living is going higher. Guys that are buying 3-4 pairs of trainers that are not in the high earning value kind of consumer, that number is going to be going to 2 to 3 or 1 to 2. So, it's the way that it's going. In addition to that as well, like speaking of brands also that associate to Kanye, Balenciaga. Now, I wanted to speak about this. You've seen the story. Just give us the 4-on-1 on it. Balenciaga's controversial photo shoot.
Yeah, so they had a campaign where they had a photo shoot showing child models posing with like teddy bears that are like fetish themed.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a very it's
disturbing. I've seen the pictures.
It's just wrong. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, but it's just flat out wrong what they've done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of effectively what it is. And there's obviously a lot of backlash about it. And people who are associated to the brand, like Kim Kardashian and stuff, have been kind of speaking out about it and been asked.
What did she say?
Good question. Let me find it.
Well, wait, just based off like, was it good or bad? Okay, I found it.
Okay, here we go.
Fortune. Kim Kardashian demands. Hold on. Kim Kardashian demands Balenciaga take action after double controversy over child exploitation ads. It seems that they listened. Here's what they're proposing. Shall I pull the story? Are you seeing the same story on your screen? Shall I pull it up on screen share?
Pull it up because I'm looking at the BBC one. But
okay.
Shaken by the disturbing images.
Who? Yeah. Is that what they're saying about her?
She's got a tweet that she put out, and it's a long thread.
Okay.
I've been quiet for the past few days, not because I haven't been disgusted and outraged by the recent Balenciaga campaigns, but because I wanted an opportunity to speak to their team to understand for myself how this could have happened. As a mother of 4, I've been shaken by the disturbing images. The safety of children must be held with the highest regard, and any attempts to normalize child abuse of any kind should have no place in our society, period. And then she goes on, there's a bunch of tweets. I appreciate their removal of the campaigns and apology. And then she goes, as for my future with Balenciaga, I'm currently reevaluating my relationship with the brand, basing it off their willingness to accept accountability for something that should have never happened to begin with, and the actions that I'm expecting to see them take to protect children. So overall, obviously disgust and shame, but quite a balanced response, actually.
I don't understand in this kind of situation, other than money, why she wouldn't just say, I'm leaving this company and going to another company, because it's really terrible. Like, it's really terrible. And we've seen it before. We've seen them put out images which could be triggering or aggravating to so many different communities, not least the Black community, when it comes to the way they've been portrayed through design, or kind of like, things that big brands have done. But this is just absolutely ridiculous. It looks like somebody here on the team here has made an apology. Let me just find out what it is.
I think it's the designer. This is the designer, right?
So
it's the guy who did the person who did the actual design of the shoot.
Yeah, and I think this is the person that on Drink Champs, Kanye was saying was like a genius and maybe the best designer in the world. He was saying we've got him over at they've got him over at Kanye's label Donda, and he goes, Demna, or he was working with Donda, I guess, on collabs. Demna Gvaslia said that he takes responsibility for the scandal. Despite wanting to provoke thought through his work, he'd have never done so with the subject of child abuse. In an online message, I want to personally apologize, he says, for the wrong artistic choice of concepts for the gifting campaign with the kids, and I take my responsibility. It was inappropriate to have kids promote objects that had nothing to do with them. As much as I would like to provoke a thought through my work, I would never have an intention to do that with such an awful subject as child abuse that I condemn, period. I need to learn from this, listen and engage with child protection. I mean, I haven't got time for this. Cancel this cat. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not Mr. like cancel, whatever. But what I do know is that the checks and balances in this world are so high. I mean, we do business in the corporate world when it comes to communications. We help brands through creative content agency do comms internally that are never seen by the outside world. And it can take months before a podcast microphone is switched on or something like that. We are talking about something that made it from this guy's head to the people, to a photographer who never flagged it, to a parent of these children who never flagged it, to the printers, the color designers, the people that do post-production, the people that do the concepts, the people that book the studios, the people that sign off the concepts. It's all outlandish, and I just think we need to not accept it. And I feel it's crazy that, you know, it's not had a bigger deal made of it. And it really does. It's weird because Kanye has spoken out about it and said it's terrible. And he goes, the reason why celebrities aren't speaking about it is because they are kind of under the thumb of these brands. And that's what makes the Kanye thing really tricky, is that he's not gone full tilt. As with everything with Kanye, some stuff that he says does resonate, but it resonates with a logical, legal person, and the other stuff resonates with illogical and illegal people. So I feel like this is terrible, man. I think we just need to just stomp it out. And I actually feel like now it's times like this right now where wherever Balenciaga is registered, the country where that company is registered, the leaders of business should be condemning it, and wherever it's distributed, it should be, you know, there's definitely retail associations in the UK. There's definitely billboard companies and JC.co and all these other people in the UK that should be saying, hey, we've seen this and we're not going to be carrying it, and we condemn it on behalf of the advertising industry, period. Never mind the fashion industry. We need to stomp these things out.
Yeah, I think so. I had exactly the same thought. I was like, you know, the large scale corporate stuff that we do and the small scale stuff that we do for like personal brands, everything is checked meticulously. And if something goes through, it might be like a spelling error or something, you know, like, but nothing as big as this. Nothing is like as dumb as this. But here, as you were talking, I was like, how does it get through? How does it get through? Right? Like how?
Well, it doesn't. Because it was meant to be. This is all calculated. Right. They have priced in the controversy.
Yes.
And this is the thing. I think it could have happened in the past. We've seen it with Prada. We've seen it with Gucci. But I think now, as we head into the world that we're heading into, I think justice is going to be served cold. I want the market to reject anybody who makes significant mistakes, whether it's Elon buying Twitter, Facebook changing its name to Meta, whoever it is. If you make a mistake, you need to feel the full force of the market. And I think if there's going to be one upside of the next. No, I'm saying
this is not a mistake for sure. This is
no, you're right. You're right. You know, I'm
blatant
saying
disrespect to. Like it's just like this is not a mistake.
No,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
No, I'm saying we literally had this deja vu moment on a previous podcast. What I'm saying, a mistake as framed by them. We know it's calculated, right? We assume that it's calculated, and we know that it'd be tough to argue against it. But if they are going to say, "Hey, we did this. We've now got all the upside from the PR. We're now in everybody's like thoughts, and now we just want to apologize for it." Normally, an apology is enough to not feel the full force of the market. Right now, the full force of the market needs to speak up. And, you know, if you go out in Dubai, even our friends, a lot of people wear the classic Balenciaga t-shirt with the long wavy logo on the back. I now need to see people. I'm going to do my bit by saying to people like, yo, that's not a cool t-shirt, because the people that benefited from you swiping your card are either idiots or they're calculated, immoral savages. And they should not be compensated by the purchase of this $80 or $90 t-shirt. It should not happen. I don't want to see it. The connotations, we need connotational justice. We need it for Kanye to be served on Kanye. We need it to be served on brands like Balenciaga. Like, it's whack.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think not to get too like cancely, right? Because that's whatever it is, but it's true. This has gone through, and you named, I don't know what, 8 to 10 checkpoints within that whole process, and there are more, as we know. There's probably another dozen or so, if not more than that, checkpoints. But the one that stood out to me, and this is the one that's kind of given me the opinion that I'm going to give you, is that calculated. I agree with that. The parents. So the parents are okay with it. So they must have either been there on the shoot, because you can't just have a kid there on their own. They must have seen the images or whatever. But, clout. This is the thing. I think everyone just wants the clout of being involved with, I'm involved with this big brand, and, this famous brand, and it's moving culture and all this kind of stuff. So everyone just doesn't want to say anything because they don't want to lose their opportunity. It's self-interest, right? The problem is that we as a society, and I don't want to get too like, like, I don't know what the word is, but we put too much on celebrities and big brands, luxury brands, whatever it is. We put too much emphasis on how amazing they are and how powerful they are and all this kind of stuff, where the reality, if we boil it all down, no brand or individual or personality or celebrity should have any real control over what you do and how you live your life. We know that's the case, and it's fine, but we put too much on Balenciaga, using them as the example, and the fact that they're so amazing because they've just done this new like style of t-shirt and it's got this on it. Like, who gives a crap? It's not that important. But because we build up this importance, but put them on such a big pedestal, this stuff happens. They're like, we'll get away with it because what are they going to say to us? We have too much control. We have too much power over them. We can shift culture too easily, that there are enough people that will forgive us or turn a blind eye. That's the problem. So yes, the brand should be condemned, but the people who actually turn a blind eye, that put too much power in their hands, they're at fault too. Like, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Like celebrities like Kanye, we put so much, and like, I'm guilty of it as well, because I have, quote unquote idols in music and film and TV. These are my passions, but I don't put any power in them where they can move the needle in my home, like influence how I treat my family or anything like, like that. It's never that, but it influences what I watch and what I listen to and how I might feel or something. But, but en masse people do that. And it's wrong. Like, it's just wrong.
Yeah. So this is what we've spoken about before, which is the vacuum effect, right? So when you remove the norms that have kept society together for a long period of time, it creates a vacuum. It doesn't create a hole, because that can remain a hole. A vacuum will pull something in. And what gets pulled in the absence of the family institution, the institution of a government, or the institution that's driven by a religion or a set of spiritual beliefs, is when you break these things apart and you deconstruct them, you destroy and you divide and conquer these philosophies. Like, you literally break up people's homes, remove the dads, you give no stability in the economy, you give no guidance from the government in the West, which is what we're seeing in the UK at the moment, and the US. You break these things apart, and what gets pulled in? These heroes, these new heroes, the Kanyes, the Balenciagas, the Disneys, they all come in. And by the way, I'm mentioning big brands because they're big brands, not because of what their guiding principles are. So they come in and then they become the new leaders of the minds of these people. And then when they make these mistakes, well, people go, well, what am I going to do? I don't follow this church. I don't follow this government. I don't believe in this. Balenciaga's done something wrong. It's easy for me to forgive Balenciaga than it is for me to forgive, a tax adjustment in the government or whatever. Yeah. So it's really, we are definitely going through like scary hours right now. And yeah, this is what happens is these people, they select the Elons to become their new kind of like spiritual leaders or social leaders. It's really quite scary to say that Elon Musk is not as powerful as, I don't know, Joe Biden. There's not many things that separate them now. I mean, Joe Biden has nuclear codes and he is the head of the US Army. Like, he's got jurisdiction over those things. But, there's probably a dozen to 24 things that Joe Biden does that the biggest entrepreneur in the world and the biggest entrepreneur coming out of the US doesn't have. That to me is too close a margin when it comes to power dynamic.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, comparing Elon and Joe Biden, because frankly speaking, Elon's probably got more power aside from what you just said.
Yeah.
Like more influence and more power. Here's what I think people need to probably do. Just make their world smaller. Right? So the world is huge. We know that, but it's also very small, like your 6 degrees of separation, blah, blah, blah. But we have access to everything, literally everything. Right, wrong, true, false, good, bad, ugly, whatever. We've got access to basically everything. And it's up to us to decide what we follow, what we believe in, what we believe is true, what is not, what is good, what is bad. Kind of comes down to us. So as a human species, we don't know how to do that at this scale. We just don't have the tools in our brain. No one does. So if we can make our world a bit smaller, then I think we'd be okay. It's not easy to do because, this is here right now, and we're talking online.
The mobile phone for people not watching the video.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course, the mobile phone.
Yeah.
We're talking online to each other, and we live, 10 minutes drive from each other, to people on the internet about stuff that we've read on the internet that's happening in the world. And we only know about it because we're reading it on the internet. So I get it. But from just forget, do what you want to do online, read stuff, but connect with the people around you, the community, your neighbors, your family, whoever it is, but just kind of create your world a bit smaller. And then you have a little bit more kind of reality around you. And that gives you perspective on what's happening in your world and the outer world, and where you can maybe draw some lines and draw some differences. I think that's important. Now, how you do that is up to the individual, but the truth is, if you just do like small community events, go meet your neighbors, just spend time with your family and put your phones down, switch them off. I'm showing people just turning it upside down or just putting it away. That will help.
It's the concept of being a private landowner, right? It's like you can do what you want. You're talking about boundaries there, Vic. You're talking about setting some boundaries and saying, well, this is what I can control and this is what I can't control. And I'm just going to work my hardest to make sure that the truth that I want to live inside my boundaries, I'm going to do every single thing that I can. So if I want to make sure that there is no non-organic vegetables in my house, or there is no Balenciaga products, or Kanye West is not showed, or violence is not shown to, my children, or bad language is kept out of their Spotify playlist, whatever it may be, you can control that as the kind of like queen or king of your castle. I think that's really good. I think again, it just comes down to owning your own space and kind of quote unquote thinking about yourself as a landlord, like, and being like, okay, this is acceptable on my land, and where you can control like your content diet, your information diet, things of that nature, you should be really, really proactive. And I've been thinking about this for myself recently a lot. As you know, in our business, a lot of the business is driven like kind of like by me. I am the business in terms of like the billboard of the business. And for many years, I was a kind of like freelancer / gun for hire. And it's incredible how like businesses have their codes of conduct, their mission statement, their core values. But when we go out there as individuals, we don't say what our core values are, or what our boundaries are, or what our policies are. When you engage with a company will say, we do this and we don't do this. And I feel like I'll tie it back to what you were saying. But, if you are a freelancer, you are a business or a small business or somebody who runs things by themselves, you should have an email policy about how you work on your website. And then if you start thinking about that as a parent or as a child who's running your house or whatever the case may be, you kind of got to sit down and be like, well, what are our policies? What do we accept? What's inbounds and what's out of bounds? And I think that's what this really weird concoction of a year that is 2022 has kind of forced us to think about.
We have that in our house. We don't have them written down, but it's something that we talk about all the time. And the other thing about it is that they're constantly changing. You know, like the core values don't change, but you know what's inbounds and outbounds, that evolves, because as my son grows older, as we're exposed to new things, new challenges, new ideas, he's trying new activities or whatever, you know, then they evolve and they change, and they should. But our core values don't change, and you know we speak about it in the house fairly regularly. But what I would say is this: as a individual freelancer and gun for hire, you've never really needed to, you or anyone that's in that position, never really needed to make it explicit, because it's done through your actions and the way that you interact with people and the way that you deliver your work and whatever it might be. Whereas these big corporations, you need to make it explicit, because not everyone is the same and not everyone's going to act the same. So if you recruit against those core values and you can make sure that those are instilled and permeates through the organization and everyone represents them, they need to be explicit for someone, for a big organization. But as an individual, you don't need to. But I do agree with you. I think for someone that's a freelancer, anyone out there, or a gun for hire, or even 2, 3, 4-man person team, yeah, making it explicit just makes you more mature, makes you more grown up as a business and as an individual.
Well, I wasn't thinking as an individual. I would probably push back on that, and I would say, as an individual, right, you probably do need to do it. So let me give you my example. On my website, on rajkotecha.com, there is a section somewhere, I can't remember where it is, where it kind of says, like, I think it's FAQs, right? And it says, will you speak for free at events? And it says, yes, but it depends on what's happening. If it benefits less fortunate people, you've really got a case and you should apply for me to speak there. Will you repost certain content? Or can you make introductions to certain people? And what I like to do is I like to send that to people. So when someone says, hey, man, I see that you're friends with this person. Can you please introduce me? I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. When I say I can't do it, I'm not then writing out for the first time on that message why I can't do it. I just say, sorry, I can't, for the following reasons as stated on this link. So then the person who's being refused the action feels respected enough to know that you have a policy on that. And I think, we talk about things like entrepreneurs' mindset and stuff like that. I think what's worth thinking about right now is the operator's mindset. Like, you are an operator in your family as a husband, as a dad, as a son, etc., etc. And I think you've said, I think it's part of your language set that you speak. You've said before to me, like, I don't operate like that. And I think we've got to start thinking about, how do we operate? And then coming back to that document, proverbial or otherwise, coming back to that document saying, what are within my operational boundaries as a human being, as an individual, if I'm a freelancer or a solopreneur or the head of a business with multiple staff, or I'm a partner to other businesses or to other individuals on the planet, how do I want to operate? And I think if you combine that with things that have really had a good run in the last decade, things like journaling and stuff, you can go back through your journal. I don't journal. I don't think you do either, but you can go back through your journal and say, well, what are the trends in terms of the things that I've been logging down for the last few months or last few years? And does that set an operating policy for me as an individual? Something definitely to think about. We'll move on to the last story, which is nice adjacent to this, because we've been talking about canceling, and we might be now seeing the reverse canceling or bringing back online of somebody who had a big bad year. We spent a lot of time, I think Alex and I, we did a special on this, an emergency pod, the only emergency pod we've done in 2022, about Will Smith. Now, Will Smith hit up Trevor Noah. I'm so glad that you put this in here. I'm really, really glad, because of the fact that just this morning, in between waking up and going back to sleep, I did two things. I went for a 3K walk and 7K cycle with Sal. I had the incredible chicken soup that your wife gave me yesterday, Shayla passed on, as breakfast. and I managed to get through that 20 minutes of Will Smith and Trevor Noah. I did it reluctantly because I was like, it's Trevor Noah, it's going to be a fluff piece. And all of the fluff that I was expecting really, really never showed up. They did a nice deep dive on the main character in Emancipation, Will Smith's upcoming movie. But then I would probably, arbitrarily, I would say that they probably spent about 2/3 of screen time on the slap that happened at the Oscars. I was pleasantly surprised with Trevor. I feel like Trevor went long on a lot of his sentences, and Will Smith had to bully his own way back into his points. I think Trevor was going really long, but I think Trevor was also probably a little bit excited by the conversation, or his nerves got going. There's a lot of times where he would cut Will off, and then Will would have to cut Trevor off to actually get a chance to answer his own question. But it wasn't a bad piece of content, and I do feel like Will Smith summarized it nice. I wish he'd said it. He was like, I was going through something that night, and this is what happened. The only icing on the cake, I would say, in that interview is I kind of wish that Will Smith, if it was the truth and he was able to say it, would have said, you know what, upon reflection, I probably shouldn't have come. Knowing what I know, I probably shouldn't have come that day. And if I win it, I win it. And if I don't, I don't. But if I win it and this happens, it's kind of not worth it. Because isn't it so ironic that him winning his first Grammy, if he'd done it via video, it would have probably been better for him than it would have been for him to be there and then for it to play out the way that it played out. You saw the interview, right? I'm guessing because you put it on the docket for today's show. What did you think?
Yeah, I watched it at 1.25 speed. I was like, I didn't have enough time to watch it properly, but I think that the interview was fine. Regardless of anything, Will Smith is a global superstar, and I don't care if anyone says he's done bad movies or good movies or great movies or whatever. I think he's a great actor, and I really enjoy watching his movies, even Wild Wild West. But I feel like he hasn't, and if I've missed it, I've missed it, but he hasn't really apologized. I know he did this video like a little while ago, and it was very weak and it felt very scripted and very overly produced and inauthentic. But I'm not sure I don't know if I'm wrong, but I've not had an apology directly to Chris, and I don't know Chris Rock, and I don't know if he's done it behind closed doors because there's been no mention of it. So
I think he said in his official statement, I want to apologize to Chris. I think
Right,
there was something written on Instagram, but yeah, I mean, I think as well.
In my opinion, weak in my opinion. I don't think that was strong enough. But this was cool. Trevor Noah was fine. I think he's balancing his roles as an interviewer, a friend to Will Smith, a comedian and part of that community. So, it's tricky, I guess, for him as well. I think Will Smith came off a little bit narcissistic in that interview. It was too much. Yeah, it was too. I felt like in the lack of a genuinely feeling apology to Chris Rock that feels authentic, with that not being there in my eyes, he came across narcissistic in the sense that he made it all about him. Now, I understand why he did that, because he was explaining his position, and that's fair. But what this feels like is that, imagine like you have a big family Christmas dinner and you go and slap your cousin in the middle of dinner and in front of everybody, and sit down and kind of sort of don't really talk about it again for a few months and just go about your daily lives. It's kind of like that. It's kind of weird. Like it's like, what? Wait a minute, what just happened? So I don't feel like he's addressed it enough, or at least in the right way. He's explained his position, and I'm respectful of that, and that's cool. There's not everyone deserves a chance to do that. But I don't feel like, and then he just came back with like coming up on Instagram and starting to post and this and that as if nothing had happened. He did this like weird, inauthentic apology and said, right, I'm back, guys. Cool, I'm good. And he's fully accepted. Now, is it that big a deal? Maybe not. it's not as big a deal as what Balenciaga's doing or Kanye is doing. So there is some perspective there. And he had his reasons. He was going through something, and everybody goes through stuff, and the pressure on him will be, a million times more than someone like me or any other individual in the world. So fine. I mean, whatever, right? Like, I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't matter now. It's like he said what he said. It's not going to go any further or any different to this. And he'll just make his way back into the people's lives and hearts and minds and keep it moving. There's not much else I can say.
He did say though that a collective of incredible artists and talent came together to make this movie, and he does feel bad that if his role and his brand going into this movie now has a damaging effect on the movie, he feels bad about that, and that kind of eats him up. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's at this point that you really start looking at his like career-wide P&L, his profit and loss, and you go, you know what? It's worth watching this movie, knowing what this movie might mean. You've not cancelled him the way that you would cancel like a Woody Allen or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's something to look at. It's worth giving it a watch. If you don't
watch the movie, man. Yeah,
huh? I'm saying watch the movie. I'm saying if you've been following if you feel like it's one of the big storylines of the year, like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, it's definitely worth watching. But what I've always been fascinated with this, especially coming out of America, because America is a rise and fall economy, right? They love to see somebody come from rags to riches, then lose it all and come back again. And you wouldn't think it would happen in Will's career 30 odd years in, but it looks like it could. But I'm always very curious to see how a story like this plays out over time, because there's no way of, like, you can guess, but you never really truly know how it's going to play out over time. Even in the case of somebody as absurd as Kanye and what he's going through right now, if you look at America and you look at the world that we live in, you look at the technology that's coming around us and all these things and the way that people can communicate peer to peer and the way that opinions are formed, we actually don't know what people are going to think of Kanye in 10 years' time. It could be lows that we've never experienced as a society before, or it could be, he could be back to 80% of what he was 2 years ago. You just don't know.
In 10 years' time, there's a whole new generation of people that will be the guard to accept him back into society or not.
Right.
So that people that are like younger than us, will they accept him? And will they be more forgiving? Well, because of cancel culture and all that kind of stuff, you'd probably think no, but they're not, based on age, they're not as sophisticated in their brains as, we might be at our age, like in terms of wisdom. So I don't know, man. Like, we were all dumb when we were young, right? Like, we were stupid when we were young. So everyone is. So, you kind of have a misguided sense of what is right and what is wrong until you figure it out over a period of time and a number of years and a bunch of mistakes. So he might be accepted just because they're like, all right, well, that was ages ago and it doesn't mean as much to us. So it's fine. Then, or they might not. The one thing about Will Smith as well, like you quite rightly say, in his extensive career of many, 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 many highs, there's only a few lows. So you can forgive, quote unquote, forgive the odd mistake here or there or whatever. It's human to do so, right? But I don't think he came across particularly empathetic, more narcissistic. And I don't mean narcissistic in a bad way, just more self-preserving, I guess is the best way to put it, which I guess he has to do, right?
Yeah, well, on that point, heading into our content recommendations and narcissism, I don't know if you've had a chance to check out any of the video content for this week's content recommendations, or indeed the summary that I'm about to recommend. As you know, last week, super narcissist Sam Bankman-Fried started what might be the beginning of a media tour, not least with, I believe it was the New York Times. They had an event, and it was an hour long interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin, who is a highly respected journalist in this world. Have you seen any of the content from that?
I've seen zero. I've not even listened to any wrap-ups or reviews on it yet.
Okay, well, my content recommendation for this week is the CoinDesk podcast, where they do a deep dive on the SBF tour. We are gonna, or what could be the beginning of an SBF tour. I won't give anything away other than, broadly speaking, and I've not seen the full long form, I've not had the time for that, but I trust NLW and the guys on the CoinDesk podcast. And broadly speaking, they said that whilst Andrew Ross Sorkin did ask some good, direct questions and even read out some emails from people that had lost a lot of money, when SBF answered some of these questions and slipped out of them, he did so on a very, very nuanced technicality. So he was asked the question, how did you manage to like code a back door so that money could be taken out? And he goes, well, I didn't, because I don't even code. So, it's like it was coded in, and it was probably coded in under his watch. And now, obviously, now that he's resigned, he says that he'd like to, be able to do something, but he's no longer the head of the company. So there's nothing he can do. So it just feels like a real slick move. I think this guy's operating in very, very dangerous territory. From somebody from the financial world, what's really interesting about the regulated financial markets is you can have like career criminals and ethically like terrible people, like some of the people that we saw in Wall Street in 2008. And there is a system that decides whether they go to jail, and there can be corruption inside that system. We've seen that before. But this is the first unregulated mega career criminal. And so I think in an unregulated world, especially a guy who's living in the Bahamas, I do worry for the safety of this guy. I really do, because I think he's done something which is quite insane. I think there's lots of people, institutional people from the venture world that, are like, okay, yeah, this happens. But I think there's also going to be a lot of people that have lost money on an individual basis. And I think they're the people that he's running from with his backpack when he sees cameras go on him in the Bahamas. So pretty worried about that one. That would be my content recommendation. Give it a check out. If you have no intention of checking out the full long form, which is now on YouTube, definitely go ahead and check that out. Next up.
So we spoke about it briefly last week, didn't we? The Daniel Priestley interview on Ali Abdaal's podcast, Deep Dive.
Yeah, how long did it go? He went 2.5 hours.
Was it that long?
Was it? I don't know. Let me find out. Have we got the link for it?
I didn't think probably somewhere. I don't know, but I didn't think it was that long.
Okay.
But you and I both finished it, right? You finished it, haven't you?
Yeah, I finished it. I loved it. I thought it was incredible. I think it was really good because, we can speak about this now, but it was when you speak to Daniel, Vic and I had breakfast with him quite recently. Yeah, it was 2 hours and 24 minutes.
Wow.
What was really interesting about this interview, and to a certain extent, the interview that Daniel did with the Future as well, is that Daniel naturally goes into like a consultative mode and starts spitting out ideas, which is something that I like doing as well. It's my style of consulting as well, is trying to be very, very practical, or to try and kind of broaden the aperture of somebody's mind, to try and get them to think about more variables. So I think that he did a really good job doing that. And it was really nice as well, because he was quite inspiring for Ali Abdaal, and even for us as well. Like, whilst we were always considering using the Score app, which is a scorecard app that you can put information into, and then the creator of that app can assign weighting to your answers and then spit out a report on the other side, a general report. That's something that we're using right now as well. So I think that that's been something which has been quite good. It's very, very good if you're an entrepreneur, small business. We spoke about the value of it last week, but simply put, go check it out. We do need to grab the URL for it. We'll put that in the show notes. We've been terrible at show notes. What I want to do is...
Who's been doing the show notes?
Alex has been doing them and I've been doing them, but I've just been running straight out of time. So I think what we're going to probably need to do is, whilst we're all involved in the actual pre-production and production, we might also need to split up a bit of the post-production as well. Yeah. But this document that you built on Notion, Vic, which we were speaking about a year ago, is so incredible that it's going to make it just super easy to do that. So
just a quick thing. Alex has WhatsApped and he said that he'll edit the episode, so send over the files.
Oh, is that guilt?
Yeah, I know, right? He didn't. He just for everyone listening, he was supposed to show up, and in all fairness to him, we confirmed the time really late last night, so maybe he didn't see it by the time he woke up this morning. But he didn't show up for today's call time. So luckily I was here. Otherwise, Raj, you'd be doing a Dolo episode. But that Ali Abdaal interview with Daniel Priestley, just come back to that. Solid. What I really like when I listen to these sort of podcasts, I like to walk away with something that is tangible. When it's like fluffy and just like high level and, oh, people should think about this and that. No, like Daniel gets into like the dirt he'll be very strategic and talk at a very high level, and then he'll drill down on certain points, particularly. And Daniel did this, and it's very smart. He was saying, he's giving ideas and giving positions on certain things. And then when Ali Abdaal expressed like a little bit more interest or excitement or asked a couple more questions, Daniel picked up on that and just went in and gave like drill down and said, right, like gave like pointers, like tips, and like actual things that you can do and ideas. So he was very smart in doing that. And you feel that as you're listening to it. Very, very solid, this one. Very solid interview.
Brilliant. And speaking of practicality, there was another good couple of ones that you should definitely check out. Jason Calacanis, my former boss's former boss. He is 1/4 of the All In podcast. He is 1/2 of This Week in Startups with one of the greatest tech journalists and tech content creators in the world, Molly Wood. He was on the Tim Ferriss show. Incredibly good as a podcast producer, as a business builder. He's got an incredible story that goes way back into the early days of Silicon Valley. He's an angel investor. And he also talks as well about practically how he puts his podcast together, practically how he manages egos, and practically what he intends to do moving forward in the media world. He's an absolute savant in that space, loves himself for sure, but I'm not mad at him because I kind of do that myself. So it's really, really good, really great interview. Definitely check it out. Something for you to enjoy when you're traveling. And also Colin and Samir, I don't know how I came across this content, but over a period of a year, the content wasn't captured over a period of a year. They dropped these episodes a year apart. If you head over to the Colin Samir podcast, check out their interview from 2021 with Mr. Beast, and then this year with Mr. Beast's manager. I'll put the links to both of them in there, but Mr. Beast is one of the biggest content creators in the world. But what I really liked about the back and forth there is that Mr. Beast talked about being Mr. Beast and being obsessed with just putting out great content and really not even caring about the money side of things. And Mr. Beast's manager spoke about what it's like dealing with that and dealing with that level of talent. And also Mr. Beast's manager was with him from the journey from 1 million followers to 100 million followers. And so that he wasn't there for day one, but to be honest, what happens, and we know this, Vic, as people that have been building brands, is that as the creator of the brand, you can take it to a certain level. And then at some point you've got to plug it into a larger machine or start building a team around you. So these are very, very good episodes for content creators. We'll link them up in the show notes. Finally, any shout outs for this week? Shout to shout out to all these Asian teams like coming out the Far East that are like killing it. I love it. Like Korea and Japan and all these dudes that are coming out and like smashing the football. I don't know who won what and why and goal difference, but I just like the fact that people that look like this are getting through. Makes me feel happy.
Well, there is one interesting thing. Portugal are playing Switzerland in the next round of the World Cup. So that's like, my family against Alex's. So
oh, it's gonna get real.
Yeah,
it's gonna get real.
Before we sign off, at the risk of taking another hour to record, we haven't done Out and About in Dubai yet.
Oh damn! Okay. Damn, yeah. That's so. Can we do this? We might need to move these tables around because I'm on our docket.
Okay, yeah, I see.
They need to be in the flow of things because I messed this up at the beginning as well. We actually ended up redoing the intro to this. Okay, Out and About in Dubai. Let's start with you. You took off a few days off last week. Your in-laws were in town. Where'd you go?
So for Shayla's birthday, her parents wanted to treat her. They're in town. They've been in town for about a month or so. They're here for another week, maybe. They wanted to treat her, so they took us to Abu Dhabi, and we stayed at the Jumeirah resort in Saadiyat, the new Jumeirah resort in Saadiyat. That was a phenomenal experience. The quality of Jumeirah, the standard of Jumeirah is so incredibly high. Like, I'm fortunate, I get to travel and stay in different places, good, bad, ugly. But the standard Jumeirah is really, really, really high. Everything from when you drive your car out to the valet, through to the check-in, through to your room, through to like the service on the beach and the pool. Everything was really, really solid. So we went out there last Thursday and we came back on Sunday. And it was just a time just to like relax, basically just chill. we got upgraded from our suite, which was a deluxe suite. They upgraded us to an ocean view. We had 2 rooms, upgraded us, no issue, no problem, treated us really nicely. I don't know, man. Like, I'd recommend the Jumeirah Resort to anyone. It's in Saadiyat, Abu Dhabi. It's solid, dude. Like, it's so nice. Really, really, really nice. It's not the cheapest.
It's not going to
Certainly.
be. It's true.
Yeah.
Like Jumeirah launched Al Naseem in here in Dubai, I was like, oh, these dudes are playing a different game. Like, even if you go to Rockfish, which is Jumeirah over
Yeah.
there by Burj Al Arab, I don't know if it's in Burj Al Arab or next to it. No, I think it's the Jumeirah Beach Hotel. Jumeirah don't leave the house to play games, man. They really, really, really smash it. I'm so happy that you had that experience, for one, because you've been working like a beast. And so to balance that out, you know, in the absence of going to like another tropical country, like, not that we're in one, sorry, but like in the absence of going somewhere tropical, the fact that you got to experience it on basically the nicest island in the country is really good. So I'm happy for you. It's gonna be goals for me. It's not a goal I can achieve right now, but it's definitely going to be goals for me. So good. So Jumeirah over in Saadiyat, definitely go check it out. I can't wait. Might be for me, maybe something for birthday next year or something. Talking about nice experiences and a little bit exotic, we actually went over this week to join our friend Christian, who heads up marketing over at the St. Regis, to Hayal, which is a new Turkish restaurant. And my goodness, that's a nice space. So if anybody who is outside Dubai, the area is it's technically Business Bay, but it's called St. Regis Downtown because every hotel on this strip has called itself a downtown hotel. But it's St. Regis Downtown here on Marassi Drive in Business Bay. Super nice Turkish food. First time actually for me that I've done high-end Turkish. So, you know, CZN Barak is out here, Salt Bay's out here, all these people that do a lot of the theater, they bring the flames out, they bring the dry ice out. Real nice experience, man.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. Chris is a great guy.
Great
He's
dude.
very, 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 very passionate about food and, you know, F&B. He loves it and he knows a lot. So it's a great conversation with him, just talking about food and wine and everything. But the experience at the restaurant was great.
Yeah.
They were very, very gracious, very welcoming. The staff were phenomenal. The fit out is beautiful. And the food was really good. Yeah, food was great.
Food is great. And it's also what I like about that place as well. I kind of appreciated it coming in. I definitely appreciated it when you were leaving, is that whilst you can exit out of that hotel and then go through downstairs through like the Italian restaurant, which is called Basta, you've also got this dedicated lift, which is really cute, and it just gets you out onto the street, gets you to your driver or gets you to your taxi or gets you to your whatever, straight to the valet. Very, very nice. For us, we didn't really have that issue, but it was a great restaurant, great, and also they sell Turkish wine. My first time drinking Turkish wine. Chris knows wine inside out, so he recommended one, which just went really well with everything. So super grateful to him for the invite. Definitely go check out Hayal, and actually check out all their restaurants, because even Basta's a really great restaurant inside there as well. They do their thing. Next up, want to give a big shout out to DP World. Vic and I were over there at the beginning of the week. I was hosting the Big Tech Project. It was so incredible because personally, when I was younger, my second thesis that I wrote on European collaboration for funding for the chemicals industry was sponsored by ICI, which is a big, I got kind of like a paid scholarship for that thesis. And so at that point, I was just so humbled by the fact that even though it's just my expenses that were covered, that the private sector would step out and, you know, support people. DP World took that and multiplied it by a trillion. So they had teams that had built metaverses for different things in the world of logistics. If you don't know, DP World handles 10% of global logistics, shipping, and things of that nature. These kids in 5-6 weeks, give or take, had built whole metaverses where you could like get trained as to how to do things in virtual reality, and then you can take those things over onto like real ships and docks and ports and stuff like that. DP World gave all of the 8 finalists a paid internship. 4 of those finalists that made it, you know, to the winner and runner up got MacBooks and cash, and a lot of cash. Like, it was really, really incredible. So huge shout out to DP World. They selected me to do it based on obviously entrepreneurial background and tech interests. So I'm very grateful that I got selected for that. And I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't have expected this to be the case. Not because it's DP World, but I just don't expect that you can maintain a real culture at scale. But the vibe inside the room with the DP World staff was so nice. People were so like incredibly talented, incredibly polite. They had such a vibe with each other, like the leadership, the non-leadership, the students, the external parties, everybody that was working on that event. It was a real family affair. I could be around DP World Cats every single day, and I would just be like in a good zone. It reminds me of like the Blue Sky Thinking Group people. Like they're really like, it's like a real kind of like family vibe in there, and some really bright, intelligent people working on that project. Side note on that, I won't spend too long on it, but I also stayed there because the call time was very early for the show in the morning, and I was put up in the Rove Hotel, and the Rove Hotel is so far in Expo that it may as well be a pavilion. And so I went to the Rove Hotel, and I took a walk around Expo, and I loved it. If you've not been to Expo, now it's called Expo City. Head over there. Their main dome, where Steve Harvey gave a keynote, where Coldplay performed. All those projections are still going on. It's incredible. It's obviously a lot quieter than it was when Expo was on, but they've got a winter market there. And if you just want to go and get some steps in, it's just an incredible place. And it's well worth visiting. Handful of restaurants are still open there right now as well. I'm excited about that part of town. Might take a couple of years to get online the way that it needs to, but it's going to be an incredible part of Dubai. And I think as a country, we're probably going to do the best job post-Expo of any country in the world. The project again was called, Vic?
It's called the Big Tech Project. And just to echo one thing that you said, or just kind of add on one thing that you said, the team at DP World, you're right, culturally phenomenal, very smart, a cohesive kind of bunch of people. One thing that I was super impressed by as an operator and an events guy was that they had a number of people that were involved in the event from different worlds, like from different companies, partners that were putting together the whole event. And it's very rare, and I don't remember seeing it in the recent past, where so many different companies that are involved in putting together an event worked so well together. It's difficult to see that. It's very difficult to see that. We don't bring many people into our world when we're doing events that are outside of us or our core team. And to have all different components from internally from DP World and like 3 or 4 other partners, for them to work so well together, that takes real professionalism and experience. And, in all our years, I don't really see that very often. Even when we're doing all the wedding stuff back in the day, that's a true reflection of many different parties putting together an event. And they never used to play nice. Like it was always difficult. And I was always a central point trying to pull everyone together, but there was nothing like that here. It was really seamless. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah. So shout out to King and Co, the folks that put us in place there. If you need a team that can plug into a massive corporate machine or third parties, we'll connect you with our people. Cheryl King, she's it's the best briefing document I've ever seen for any event ever. Like she gave me the briefing document, and I got the briefing document days before, super prepared, and I could just read the briefing document, and I just totally imagined how it would be, and it went super well. And of course, with events, there's always changes, but they were completely frictionless and kind of got taken in stride. Speaking of friction, well done to the team at Press Play as well. So shout out to the co-host of the Last My Friends, Your Friends, Kelly Marie Hodgkin, who's got, I think it's KMH events, and they did a build for Press Play, like this kind of, I don't know much about football, but it's kind of like a venue where you can go and watch football. And they had a kind of a little bit of a hiccup, not through Kelly, but just, licensing and alcohol and whatnot. And they just seamlessly moved it down here to Business Bay, to Cavo. On the night was JME, one of my favorite MCs in the world, definitely out of the UK. And Lethal B, who Vic, you interviewed 13 years ago.
Bizzle.
Yeah, exactly. 13 years ago on Love Soul TV. And it was so nice because when Kelly told me that she was doing this, and, Kelly's not like a braggy person. She's not like, I do this, I do that. But, she mentioned that she's doing this. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. I would like to go and see. I probably won't come because I don't like football, but I would love to come and see JME. And And I just kind of forgot about it because I wasn't tracking when he was performing. And she proactively messaged me and said, JME's performing. I said, can I come? And, tables were like, in the thousands because you got to, get reserve a space. So she kindly arranged a free space for me and a couple of folks who were not able to make it on the day. So I went down there dolo and I just had a great time. I missed the performances because my previous dinner with another friend ran it over. So I got there. I watched a little bit of football, a little bit of their like rollout, and it was very nice. And shout out to Lethal B. I showed him your video, Vic. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, no, I don't think. What did he say? Do you remember?
Yeah,
You probably
goes,
remember, right?
he goes, yeah, he's like, God, when was that? And I was like, it was 13 years ago at Lamar's album launch. He goes, oh
No,
man,
it was Sway's album launch.
oh, was it Sway's album launch? I got
Lamar
it.
was there, but it was Sway's album launch, yeah, because Lamar and Sway did a record together, right?
Got it. Yeah, I messed it up. He goes, oh, those were good days. I said, yeah, I think I said like the LimeWire days or something like that. So we only managed to talk as the whole team were leaving because I heard he was in the house and I looked around, but I couldn't see him. There's a lot of dudes. There's definitely a lot of like the streets with that. But yeah, but then Jamie walked past at some point, and like he did when I met him at BBK O2 Takeover, and so we dapped it up and we spoke. And I know he's a vegan, so I said, "Yo, make sure you get over to Amongst Few Cafe whilst you're here because they've got some of the best vegan food in the city." And yeah, man, it was just good. We got to speak for about 10-15 minutes, had a good old time, and then took a little picture and kind of kept it moving. So big shout out to Kelly for hooking that up. It's super kind of you, man. And how nice that the co-hosts and just people in our community are just so generous to us. Is that everything, dude? Oh, and I've got to give one more big shout out. Sorry, from Out and About in Dubai. I went over to Pullman because Vic and I ended up doing a lot of work the other day and it was all in the wrong direction. So I for the first time in a long time, I took a real kick to the chest and I was quite annoyed. So I stopped working at normal people hours around 5-6 o'clock, went to the Pullman Hotel on Marassi Drive here in downtown Business Bay, and hit up our friends at Birdcage, which was dope. Birdcage is so nice. I like the folks that are there. I want to give a big shout out to Maria that's there. And I want to give a big shout out to, I think her name is Yeleni. Will I be able to find it? Will I not? Oh, Yelan? Yes, I want to give a big shout out to Yillian, model, who, by the way, looks like similar to Gabrielle Union. So I think we should definitely holler at her to make some content for us as well because she's just super dope and friendly. Maria and the whole team down there, and the barman, I forget the gentleman's name, but I'm gonna get it next time and give him a shout out. He goes, yeah, I love the pod. So that's so nice.
Oh wow, okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, love it. So shout out to them, and then we went over to meet our good friends Honeycomb HiFi, which I was doing a walk with Sal this morning, and he was saying that like Honeycomb's starting to hit its tipping point, and I was like, you're right, like everybody's eyeballs are on Honeycomb HiFi right now. Like when I posted about it, I only did one post, one post. Mad people text me and was like, where's that? Even though I tagged the venue inside there and they reposted it, a lot of people were like, I've just not seen anything like that. So it's a listening bar. I think their speakers in there cost like 80,000 or something crazy like that. They play off vinyl. Their mixer, it's all knobs. Old school rotary mixer.
Yeah.
Patchouli was in the house. So I was actually leaving the Pullman. I said, you know what, let me just pull up Honeycomb Instagram and see who's performing. Patchouli was performing. Patchouli obviously has always supported us at My Friends, Your Friends, supported us, Raj Kotecha birthday party. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and buy a glass of wine and listen to her play some records. And there were such nice people in there. She introduced me to some lovely people. But of course, I want to give a shout out to our man, 50 grand, Stefan Lamar, who's in there running things. And obviously the other Stefan there, Stefan Vegas. I want to give a shout out to Linda at the door. And then we also got a chance to chop it up with Varun, who we've mentioned on this podcast before, who's just the nicest dude. He's one of the owners. And then he introduced me to the K in VKD because Varun is the V. Khaled, who I also met. Didn't really get a chance to chop it up too much with Khaled, but I look forward to doing that in the future. Maybe we should get them on the pod because these guys are there's certain dudes in the city. Like if you look at VKD, they've got Indochine, they've got Lilies, and they've got Honeycomb. These are royal flush guys.
Yeah.
And then it's the same as those dudes like Corin and them that have got Bombay Bungalow and
Ibn Bahar
Blue Seafood Asia. And
yeah.
and Musty. We should probably start getting some of these dudes on, because all of these people, like, we know are our friends, and they've all been like, Caterer just did their like most influential power list.
Yeah.
And so many of our friends in F&B
Yeah.
on that list. We should probably actually start pulling up at their restaurants when they're not trading and just sitting with them and being like, yo, how do you cut through? Like, because one thing I noticed about that power list is there was a lot of people on there, like maybe 100 cats on there. To even be in the top 100 is really difficult in this city, in a city where there's just so much food and beverage and entertainment. But these guys like VKD and all these other people, they're culturally relevant as well. Like they actually change the texture of the city, including like Labito and what he's doing over at Electric Pawn Shop. So if you want to see that in the future, drop us a message. We'll probably do it anyway, to be fair, because we like these dudes. That's everything, right?
That's it. We're done.
All right. Thanks so much for checking out the show, guys. We always go long on these episodes when it's just Vic and I, but we had a lot to cover. Maybe we go to twice a week. Oh, a couple of questions for you, Vic. Let's do this building in public exercise. Episode 50 is coming up. We can create a situation where episode 50 happens before you leave. Would you like that?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And what should we do for episode 50?
I don't know, man. Maybe we get some of the editorial team on.
Yeah, we should do that. I was thinking actually we should do a live one. Maybe we save that for episode 100.
All right, cool. So
yeah, we haven't got the capacity to do a live podcast at the moment.
That's cool, because look, we're at episode 48 now. We're going to be at episode 50 in 2 weeks, roughly. And then
we're definitely going to do an episode post SoleDXB.
Yeah, like next week, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll do one next week, and then we'll do one the week after. So that's episode.
No, but that would be the one. That would be episode 50.
Which one? Which one will be episode? Which episode is this?
Post Soul will be episode 50, which will be the last one before I start traveling.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll get the editorial team on here. I'm sure that's going to be a super long episode. We'll get stories figured out nice and in advance. Last week, I apologized to our editorial team because I didn't give them a shout out. I feel like maybe we should get a standard outro that gives them all their props. But we've got an incredible editorial team that help us choose our stories. So big ups to Arjun, Bal, Jessel, Kishan, Kyron, Neil, Sal, and Wes. And let's get everybody who's showing us love right now, make it real. 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast helps us get discovered. 5 stars on Spotify. I believe now there's even a comment section on Spotify where you can message the show. I don't know if we have it on ours yet, but that's coming up, or it's already there. And thanks for supporting the show. We'll see you next week. Peace.